Number 10. Ben Parker. Ben and May, by the way, are going to be names you'll get familiar with on this list, so to start off with each point, I'm going to try to clarify just which Ben and which May we're talking about. This Ben is from the Spider-Man limited series written by J.J. Abrams and his son Henry. It's known as the 2019 Just Spider-Man series, or Spider-Man Volume 3. Here Ben was a young boy when his mother Mary Jane Watson was murdered by the villain known as Cadaverous. His father Peter, distraught, retired as Spider-Man and abandoned his son, leaving him to be raised by what should be a super elderly Aunt May at this point. Aunt May raised Ben as she had Peter and eventually gave him his father's costume, which he then wore to impress his classmate Faye Ito, or Ito Faye, depending on how you want to say it, Japanese way or American way. But when Cadaverous resurfaced, Ben also wore this suit to fight against him, possessing the same powers as his dad. Number 9. May Parker. This May Parker comes to us from Universe X, from the reality of Earth 1122. She first appeared in Universe X issue X. Yep, weird lettered issue. I don't like that. Her past is similar to that of another alternate daughter of Spidey's, but with one possible difference. It's implied that she is actually the daughter of clone Ben Reilly and not Peter himself. Her mother is Mary Jane, however, implying that Ben and MJ maybe had a thing, maybe while she was with Peter. We don't really know. She has similar powers to that of Spider-Man and ends up joining X-51 superhero team composed of different heroes from alternate realities known as the Heralds. You can check out the Heralds team in the Paradise X Herald series. Number 8. Spider-Woman. Ashley Barton is technically Spider-Man's granddaughter, but is still a grandchild of his, so still a child of Spider-Man. See what I did? And she is super cool, so I had to include her. She made her first appearance in 2003's Wolverine series issue 67 and comes to us from the Old Man Logan universe of Earth 807128. She is the daughter of Peter Parker's youngest daughter, Tonya, and Hawkeye. Yeah, try not to focus too much on the potential age difference there. Feels a little wince-inducing. Ashley attempted to take over Hammer Falls and usurp Kingpin's rule there, but she was captured. Old Man Hawkeye later rescued her, only for her to try and kill him, surprisingly. She appears to have powers similar to those of Spider-Man. It's kind of a weird point to finish it on, but whatever, Amanda, that's what you wrote. Number 7. Richie Parker. Richie Parker comes to us from the House of M reality. We've seen 2 different versions of him from different realities, and it's implied that Richard Parker II would grow up to exhibit superpowers similar to his father's, potentially even being able to produce organic webbing in addition to Peter's usual power set. Rather than being the son of Mary Jane and Peter, Richie is the son of Gwen Stacy and Peter Parker. There is a version of him with powers in What If Spider-Man House of M issue number 1, and a little baby version of him in the series Spider-Man House of M.
Number 6. Spider Cyborg. Coming from Earth 2818, this version is a dark future Spider-Man. I mean, look at him, of course, there's some sort of future-ness going on here. He made his first debut in Superior Spider-Man issue 33. Now, it's Peter Parker if he got cybernetic additions. It's badass, that's basically all it is. His one eye can zoom in, go all tactical, the claws can certainly leave a mark, and one of the most remarkable features, his arm cannon, his sonic arm cannon, that's definitely a plus. Now, before Karn came to Earth 2818, our Superior Spider-Man warned him, and then when Kane finally did show up, Superior Spider-Man and some other webbed friends joined the battle. His left eye being a red lens is actually a nod to his appearance earlier on in the 90s in Spider-Man issue 21, titled Dealing Arms. Number 5. The Scarlet Spider. Ben Reilly first appeared in Amazing Spider-Man issue 149 as a clone. He was part of the whole clone thing that went on for way too long. But it wasn't until Spider-Man issue 5 that he was introduced to readers as the Scarlet Spider. Now, the Jackal created the clone using Peter's DNA, and he was made to fight Peter, of course. He's like, hey, if you can't beat him, just clone him. Now, the two were fighting it out in order to save Ned from a bomb, and then when the clone seemingly died, he was soon buried after. But the thing is, the Jackal injected him with something earlier so he could survive something like this. Of course. So for the next 5 years, he thought of himself as the useless clone that came back to life, then gave himself the name Ben Reilly. So depressed. Perhaps one of the better elements to come from the Clone Saga was Ben Reilly. One of the few things. Number 4. Spider-Man 2099. Ah yes, the not so near future. 2099 Spider-Man, aka Miguel O'Hara, is the current web-slinger over there, and his outfit is one of the more memorable ones. His DNA was biologically mixed with a spider's DNA, so it's a little bit different than our spider bite scenario that we have. Now, he worked at Alchemex and was pressured by the company to test genetic coding, and after Mr. Sims didn't make one of those test runs, just went horrible, Miguel was then poisoned by Tyler Stone with a fatal drug named Rapture, so Miguel ended up relying on the drug so much that he couldn't quit his job. How brutal is that? It's like every McDonald's employee. It's like, yeah, you want free nuggets? Yeah, sign in tomorrow. You're not going anywhere. So Miguel ended up relying on the drug so much that he tried to genetically fix himself and fix his body. Now, of course, this had a brighter turnout than expected, but Miguel inherited Spider-Man abilities plus telepathy. Must be nice. Number 3, the Spider. Earth 15 Spider-Man, simply referred to as the Spider, comes into comics during the Exile storyline issue 12. Now, he was another Cletus Cassidy pretty much. I mean, he was a red-haired psycho who had no problem taking out innocent people, so when the Spider symbiote came along on this Earth, it merged with evil Peter, who was sentenced to not 1, not 2, but 67 life sentences from a jury. Okay, so he's bad. He was a big part of the Weapon X team, and he had Deadpool's sense of humor too, which made him just that much more evil. Now in Exiles issue 44, he was finally stopped by Firestar when she hit him with a mega blast. He was later buried in the prison cemetery, so even after death, you're still doing that time. Number 2, Miles Morales. Of course we gotta talk about him. He made his first appearance in Ultimate Fallout issue 4 just a couple months right before the death of Peter Parker. Now this is a crazy time because Norman Osborn was just arrested and revealed as the Green Goblin, and while Miles was visiting his Uncle Aaron, an enhanced spider crawled out of Aaron's bag, bit Miles, and Bob's your uncle. You know the rest. Now he got these amazing Spider-Man abilities, but he could also camouflage himself almost fully invisible. Plus Venom Blasts will help get the job done, that's for sure. The new PlayStation Spider-Man game is way more fun with these added abilities. Makes it way better, so I had to put them on this list and talk about them. Especially we're talking about abilities. Hold L1 and just punch someone's chest through the wall, you're like, yeah, this is great. And finally, number 1, Cosmic Spider-Man, aka Captain Universe. This Spider-Man is one of, if not the most powerful alternate version of the web slinger. Cosmic Spider-Man went toe-to-toe with Rune King Thor and came out on top. So if you're not sold now, just get out of here. Actually, don't get out of here. Watch the rest of this video. Don't even say that. Never mind. Cosmic Spider-Man is from Earth 13. He retains the powers of the Enigma Force, and he first appears in Amazing Spider-Man Volume 3, Issue 9. Cosmic Spider-Man can't leave his universe or else he would lose the Enigma Force. That's why the Resistance of Spider Heroes were based in Central Park of Earth 13. They're like, hey, no sweat, we'll come to you, no problem. We don't mind the commute. He meets his demise only a couple issues later, sadly, when the Inheritors were hunting down Spider-Man and their leader Solus drained the Enigma Force from him. But we can find more of him in What If Volume 2, Issue 31, titled What If Spider-Man Had Kept His Cosmic Powers, which I may or may not touch on in my next video. We'll see, stay tuned, it's a good one.
Number 10, Felicity Hardy. Alas, we have yet to get a child whose parents are Black Cat, aka Felicia Hardy, and Spider-Man, aka Peter Parker. In the PS4 DLC featuring Black Cat for the Spider-Man game, it was alluded that Felicia had maybe had a secret son without informing Peter, and that he was the father. However, this was later revealed to all be a ruse. We got tricked. So far, that seems to be as close as we've gotten to seeing these two have a child together. What we do have though is a daughter of Felicia's who took up the mantle of Scarlet Spider. That's her daughter, Felicity Hardy, who comes to us from Earth 982. She is the daughter of Felicia and Flash Thompson, Peter's good friend and former high school bully. Felicia later leaves Flash and starts a relationship with her work colleague Diana, causing some strain between her and her daughter. Scarlet Spider was trained by her mother, has a brilliant investigative mind, and uses gadgets in order to simulate spider-like abilities while acting as a hero. She wasn't born with any specific powers. She's also a friend and ally of Mayday Parker. Number 9, Maxine Lee. Maxine Lee is like an adopted daughter to Miles Morales in the comic Miles Morales: The End. Well, really more like an adopted but willful niece. She is the daughter of Genki Lee, who in this reality of Earth 13153 became a hero before he died. Genki in the reality of 1610 is known for being Miles' BFF and also made an appearance in Into the Spider-Verse, albeit a kinda small one. I think we were all hoping for more Genki than what we got. Maxine Lee here is his daughter and is the deputy mayor of Brooklyn, while Miles himself is the mayor of New York. He insists Maxine call him Uncle Miles, but she kinda refuses to do so. Number 8, April Parker. April Parker is the clone of May Parker from Earth 982. When May was just a baby, Norman Osborn had her clone. He turned this clone into the first human symbiote hybrid. This was an experiment that was part of a plan to help Norman find a path to immortality. resurrecting himself as a more powerful Green Goblin. Originally, April was a misguided villain who actually didn't really even have a name. She would take up the name April after she reformed and agreed to join the Parker family, creating a cover of being May's cousin, with her name April being a play on May's name, as in the months of the calendar year, April and May, which are right next to one another sequentially. April would take up multiple different mantles, including Mayhem, one she took up in a future where she turned against May but ultimately sacrificed herself in order to save her cousin in the end. Number 7. Spider-Man. This is an alternate version of Jerry Drew from Earth 982. He grew up to become a Spider-Man in his reality after his mother Jessica Drew recreated the experiment that saved her life and gave her powers. She had to, as Jerry was born with a unique blood disorder, apparently being passed on from Jessica during the gestation period in her womb. Her radioactive physiology caused him to be born with this disorder, and when no one from the medical community seemed to have the answer, she turned to the procedure that once saved her life. It gave Jerry powers but didn't cure him, unfortunately. In this reality, Jessica Drew ended up retiring from her superhero life after becoming depowered. She got married and had a son, but later would divorce her husband after the trauma of not being able to cure Jerry caused strain in her relationship.
Number 6. Superior Spider-Man. A controversial pick for some, as there were some fans who absolutely loathed this arc. And it is a rather different kind of alternate, because all this is happening in the main verse in the body of main verse Peter. But let me explain. The mind is that of Dr. Octopus, who tricked Peter Parker to coming to him and then swapped with him while he was dying, so that Peter's mind was trapped in his dying corpse body. For some reason, some fans were worried that this was going to be permanent, which, I don't know, I mean, is anything? Life. It obviously ended up not being, and there was a kernel of Peter's consciousness that was left and then ended up unfurling and took back over eventually. However, some were fans of the villainous Doc Ock trying to be a better Spider-Man than Spider-Man himself. From the army of spider robots patrolling the city, to a sassy Spider-Man who a disturbing amount of his comrades couldn't identify wasn't the real Peter. For some fans, the Superior Spider-Man as an arc has earned its place as a favorite. Superior Spider-Man is still around, but it's not the same. Number 5. Spider-Side. Midway through, yet another clone. The clone saga would have been pretty disappointing if it hadn't given us what its name implied. Clones. Many clones. When Spider-Side emerged from the Jackal's pod, he was convinced that he was Peter Parker. When he was confronted with all these other versions who were already out, he decided that he was going to prove that he was the one and only by being as homicidal as possible. He became obsessed with proving that he was the real Peter Parker. He was unstable and violent and had been designed to kill the original Peter Parker. His name comes from the fact that it said that he was willing to commit Spider-Side, so mass homicide of Spider-Mans. Now some of you may be wondering, why Spider-Side and not Cain with his hand that he put on people's faces and do the Mark of Cain thing? There was something classically menacing about Spider-Side, from his simplicity to his size. And such a back-to-basics baddie worked for some fans, and made him a rather cool addition to all of these clones running around out there. Number 4. Spider-Man Noir. If there's one thing Marvel loves, it's an alternate universe story where the characters exist in another time period or genre, and Spider-Man Noir gives you both. Spider-Man Noir came into the world in 2009, and it gave the world a Peter Parker who was from 1933 and also from a Pulp Fiction style universe. A Peter Parker bitten by an illegally imported venomous spider. Now, Spider-Man Noir was not the only noir story to be created by Marvel, but it was one of the ones that blended the concepts together the best. They just kind of worked well together. The Into the Spider-Verse animated film also increased interest and fondness for this character, particularly his perplexedness over Rubik's Cubes, monochromatism. The Spider-Man Noir comic would get a spin-off and then the character would become part of the Spider-Verse event, but I mean, who wasn't? Number 3. Spider-Gwen, aka Spider-Woman, aka Ghost Spider, aka we just need to accept that everybody's gonna call her Spider-Gwen. She was conceived of for the Spider-Verse event by Dan Slott, who had been writing Spider-Man for quite some time at that point and had become obsessed with the idea of Gwen Stacy as Spider-Man. So the idea was born and would take off and would actually owe a lot of its success to her costume. Again, these things matter, people. The costume blew up and became one of the most cosplayed on the con circuit. This would actually cause a series of variant covers starring Gwen to be launched, one of which would be with Deadpool, which would actually launch the origin of Gwenpool. So we've got 2 characters out of 1. Gwen had an endearingly familiar story and design that resonated with people. She too got a boost from that Spider-Verse movie. That was just a solid movie. Most people came out of that liking most of the characters who were presented in it. Peter B. Parker. Number 2. Miles Morales. A character who predates the Spider-Verse by a couple of years. He debuted in Ultimate Fallout number 4 in 2011, and is one of the more fondly remembered elements of the 1610 universe, or the Ultimate Universe. He is also an excellent example of transitioning a character, one handled with respect for the original and also for the new character. Miles took up the mantle of Spider-Man after Peter Parker in his universe was killed. He struggled for a bit to find his footing and his own identity, but once he did, he created a rich tapestry of his own. So much so that he was one of the few characters to be imported when the Ultimate Universe was, well, ultimately collapsed. We just imported what we wanted into the 616 main verse. It's a thing, it happens. Miles was a successful legacy character because in his universe that's what he was. Now what is he? Another Spider-Man running around, but it's fine, we have multiples of everybody running around. Yeah. And in at number 1, Spider-Man 2099. The future. It can be a hard concept to pull off and make cool and credible, but the steampunk-esque adventure that was Spider-Man 2099 pulled it off. Meet Miguel O'Hara, who worked at an evil, because of course they were, corporation called Alchemax. Miguel is a geneticist who is trying to recreate the powers of Spider-Man for the company. That is until he learned a little bit more about them, and then he wanted out. Well, when they heard that, they got him addicted to an illegal drug that they were the only people who could legally distribute it. So if he didn't get it from them, he was getting it from the street, and that meant he had to be arrested, so he was trapped. Well, in order to try and get out of this, he realized he had left his genetic code inside of the machine, so he tried to revert to that earlier level of his DNA, but ended up turning himself into a Spider-Man in the process. Yes. Spider-Man 2099 was one of the more fully fleshed out of the 2099 pantheon, and certainly one of the better remembered. Plus, as always, I've said it so many times on this video, but it's still true, costume is iconic. Also has the original colors that the person who pitched the Venom suit wanted, so that's another fun fact. It can make or break a character's appeal.
Coming in at number 10, we have Spider-Wolf. Now, not a whole lot is known about this version of Spider-Man or his origin other than that he hails from Earth 13,989, a universe that is a little bit more gothic and assumed to be home to a number of werewolves. Now, the Spider-Man of this universe is no exception, but you probably already guessed that based off of his appearance alone. Going by the name Spider-Wolf, he has all the normal powers you would normally associate with Spider-Man, combined with the strength and the speed of a werewolf, which, as one can imagine, would make him incredibly powerful and a little bit scary to be around. Realizing this, the villain Karn sought out to defeat Spider-Wolf before he was recruited by the heroes of the Spider-Verse, as he could have been one of the Spider Army's most powerful allies. Karn is successful in taking him out for good before moving on to the other Spider-Folk in hopes of outsmarting the Spider Army. Created by Dan Slott, this is unfortunately all we know about this version of Spider-Man. Maybe we'll see him again in the future, who knows, but why not check him out for yourself in their first and last appearance in 2015's Amazing Spider-Man Volume 3, number 11. Number 9, we have Man-Spider. Now, there have been multiple iterations of Man-Spider throughout the years, such as the one that appeared in 1982's Marvel Fanfare number 1, when Spider-Man was exposed to a machine that turned people into primitive monsters, making him the Man-Spider, or in 1971's The Amazing Spider-Man number 100, when Peter tried to cure himself of his powers, but instead mutated them further, giving him 6 arms. I want to focus on Peter Parker, who is Earth 6078, because although his story isn't dark, like dark full of murder, it is dark as in he loses what makes him the lovable hero. Now in this iteration, Peter gains his powers in a similar manner to ours, but Aunt May dies in an accident instead of Uncle Ben. This, for some reason, leads Peter to reveal his powers to his uncle, asking him to be his showbiz manager. And needless to say, like many talented folk, Peter ended up getting a very big head and started neglecting his duties as a hero, showing off his powers for fame and profit instead, while other heroes took care of the villains. Now this caused some serious strain on his relationship with Uncle Ben, and it eventually got to the point where they stopped talking, and Peter just sends him money now out of habit to feel less guilt. Check out this sad excuse of a Spider-Man in his first appearance in 2006's Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man number 8. Number 8, the Imperfect Spider-Man. Coming to us from the critical flop Marvel Nemesis Rise of the Imperfects, we have Earth's 50,701's Peter Parker, and from what we see, he is basically Earth's 616 Peter Parker with a bit of a darker twist. Now if you're not familiar with the plot of this video game from 2005, that is absolutely okay. You did not miss very much, and it was not a good game at all. In the story mode, we see Spider-Man, the Thing, Wolverine, and Elektra captured and injected with a drug developed by an alien scientist that corrupted them and turned them into bloodthirsty killers. The now brutally violent and eager to fight heroes face off against each other in a Coliseum type battle. Thankfully, it didn't last long before Spider-Man was able to fight the drug and escape, leading the fight against a group called the Imperfects that had been infected with the same drug. Now, obviously they come out on top because it would make for a pretty terrible story if they didn't. Although this game was a massive flop, it did spin off into a very interesting series called Marvel Nemesis, the Imperfects, and within 6 issues they did a better job of explaining exactly what happened in that universe. So if you're curious, check out this limited run for yourself, or honestly, if you're a fan of bad video games and you still have a GameCube lying around, maybe try and find the game. Number 7, Spider Cyborg. On the apocalyptic Earth 2818, operating in the year 2099 AD, we have a slightly darker version of Peter Parker who, alongside his spider abilities, gains some cybernetic enhancements as well. Equipped with cybernetics covering most of his body, giving him stronger legs, metallic claws, enhanced vision, and even a sonic cannon for an arm, this Spider-Man does not come to play. Essentially, Spider Cyborg was the perfect combination of Marvel Spider-Man and DC Cyborg, making him into one of the most powerful heroes in the Spider-Verse. Now, unfortunately, like many of the other strong alternate Spider-Men, Spider Cyborg was immediately targeted by the villain Karn due to the threat that he posed. However, the superior Spider-Man appeared just in the nick of time and defeated the villain. Joining forces with the superior Spider army, Spider Cyborg attempts to defeat Karn alongside the other Spider heroes, but is eventually destroyed by Deimos when the Inheritors invaded their home base on Earth 928. Now that's all we know about this Peter Parker, which is kind of disappointing because he definitely has a badass backstory, otherwise he wouldn't have so many cybernetic enhancements. If you know anything more about this character, well, let me know in the comments below, but in the meantime, why not check out his first appearance in 2014 Superior Spider-Man number 33.
Number 6, Tonya Barton. Before she was married to Clint Barton, she was Tonya Parker, and actually, she went back to being Tonya Parker after her and Barton separated. She was Clint's third wife, if you can believe it, and the youngest daughter of Spider-Man in the reality of Earth 807128. We don't know who her mother was or who her sisters were, but we do know she had sisters. She was the mother to Ashley Barton, Peter's granddaughter, who in the Old Man universe would end up taking over Kingpin's area known as Hammer Falls, and would later team up with other multiversal spider totems in the fight against the Inheritors. Ashley's pretty cool. Tonya herself is a master mechanic and perhaps even has a knack for robotics. It's implied anyways. Number 5, Jerry Drew. Jerry Drew is theorized to be an alternate future version of Gerald Drew from Earth 8. He ends up joining up with the other alternate heroes of Earth 8, becoming a member of the Amazing 8 superhero team, known himself as Spider-Man. The team includes Spider-Girl, Spider-Boy, SP//DR, or Spider, I think is how we say that, Spider-Ham, another Spider-Man, Spider-Woman, and a Craven relative also known as Spider-Woman. Lots of Spider-Women. All of these versions of the characters seemingly originating from Earth 8, despite usually being associated with other alternate worlds. Not much is known of Jerry Drew, but he is assumed to be the son of Jessica Drew of Earth 8. He also has some pretty sweet goggles. Number 4, Spider-Boy. Maximilian Morales Stacy is the son of Gwen Stacy and Miles Morales from the alternate reality of Earth 8. Gwen and Miles learned of this alternate reality where they got married and had kids, and were super freaked out by it in the 2015 Spider-Gwen series. Max goes by the superhero mantle Spider-Boy and fights crime along with his sister and parents, which are all obviously part of the Amazing 8 team we just talked about, which operates out of Earth 8. He first became a hero while battling the villain Mojo Harvey, an interdimensional talk show host, alongside his sister. Number 3, Spider-Girl. Charlotte Morales Stacy is the daughter of Miles Morales and Gwen Stacy from the alternate universe of Earth 8. She grows up to become the teen hero known as Spider-Girl. Both Gwen and Miles worked hard as parents to shield their children from the public, as in this reality they are basically celebrities because of their hero status. The Watchers actually determined that Spider-Girl and her brother Spider-Boy were both threats to their timeline due to the fact that they would go on to become interdimensional heroes, often running into alternate versions of their parents. Awkward. Number 2, Gerald Drew. Little baby Gerald is the son of Jessica Drew of Earth 616, the main continuity. Jessica Drew, aka Spider-Woman, decided she wanted to become a mother solo styles. The story she tells her BFF Carol Danvers is that she had a pregnancy scare with a man she'd been casually seeing at the time named Ryan. After discovering, however, that she wasn't pregnant, she realized how disappointed she was. Now, she had never thought that she wanted kids, but she had never really revisited that priority in a long time. And it seemed that now she very much changed her mind and she did want kids. She really wanted a baby. She contemplated this decision for 3 months, then made an appointment appointment to discuss her options. Jessica became a mom solo after that. There was a dad, but he is presumably just a donor, not someone Jessica ever met, or maybe ever wants to meet. Her son Gerald is often babysat by Jessica's friend and later romantic partner Roger, formerly known as Criminal Porcupine, when she needs to go out on superhero business. Gerald has yet to show any signs of being superpowered, however, he's still kinda wee yet, so there's hope that we could see a little spider baby. Number 1. Mystery Baby. This has been something that has always left me wondering in the comics. MJ and Peter have gotten pregnant a few times in the comics, but none has scarred me the most is when Mary Jane was convinced she gave birth to a stillborn baby in Amazing Spider-Man issue 418. This was all revealed to be part of a plot conducted by Norman Osborn, who sought to steal that baby. Why? Well, we never really found out why. A woman in his employ named Allison seemed to spirit the young baby, who we can assume would be named May, away from her parents and off to Europe. But we've never found out what came of that child. During Identity Crisis, there was a hint that May would return, but it would turn out later to be Peter's Aunt May, and not the daughter of Mary Jane and Peter. The whereabouts of this child, if it's still alive, remains unknown. It has been suggested that the baby was killed by Norman in the comics, but then why the plot and investment to have it taken to Europe only to murder that baby? Doesn't really make a lot of sense. I'm still hopeful that one day we'll learn that the child survived and maybe see her return to the comics. Or him, that could be a twist, because I think we're all expecting, a May.
Number 10. Spider-Punk. Let's start off with a more obscure alternate, shall we? But one with quite the look. Spikes will never die, nor will the punk aesthetic. The spirit may be something else, but that's a discussion for another day. Spider-Punk is Hobart Brown from Earth 138 and comes to us from the Spider-Verse event of 2014, but he appeared in 2015. The Spider-Verse was an event where Spider-Man met so many alternate versions of himself, because there were spider totems. Being a spider person was now like an assignment from a spider god type thing. They were being hunted down by spider vampires. Mileage varies on the plot itself, but people really like the alternates. And there was pretty much all the kinds that you could conceive. For Hobart, he was a homeless teen bitten by a radioactive spider, well, irradiated in a toxic waste dump. He becomes a punk rock version of Spider-Man, with a guitar, leading the downtrodden people against President Norman Osborn. And he would be recruited to join the army of Spider-Men. For many, they just love the concept of a punk rock Spider-Man. And the images are all very fun. Sneakers, jean vests, head spikes in the form of a mohawk. There's always time for fashion. Number 9. Spider Assassin from Earth 8351. This is an alternate version of Peter Parker. He first appeared in a What If story, What If Spider-Man vs. Wolverine #1. In this universe, you had very much the same Peter Parker until he fought Wolverine. Then everything completely diverged and he ended up being trained by him and becoming an assassin. Cold-blooded assassin. No more friendly neighborhood Spider-Man over here. Fans of a darker, harder-edged Peter tend to gravitate towards characters like Spider Assassin. His costume, again, is also cool. And of course has black accents rather than blue because he's edgy. In this universe, he left Mary Jane for a woman named Alex, who looked almost exactly like Gwen Stacy and also died. Don't look like Gwen Stacy. He would be recruited into the Spider-Verse event alongside original characters like Spider-Punk. He wouldn't make it though. So much spider carnage in that event. Number 8. Man Spider. One of Spider-Man's consistent fears is being overwhelmed by Spider-Man, and nowhere does this happen more literally than when he starts to mutate into Man-Spider. This is because his DNA could be viewed as in flux. Just a little bit of a nudge sends him more down that path to his mutagenic nightmare. That was the name of one of the arcs where this happened. The full-blown Man-Spider is credited to the 90s animated series. As before that in comics, he got 6 arms, but it was something that was dealt with pretty quickly, and also that was the same issue where he met Morbius, fun fact. In the comics, the transformation tends to be triggered by meddling, people messing with his DNA, and less so because that's just the way he's going. One big devolution, or evolution, depending upon how you look at it, happened in the Savage Land, because anything can happen in the Savage Land. Rogue can make out with people in the Savage Land. Number 7. Scarlet Spider. Now there have been several characters who have taken on this mantle, but we're gonna look at the first for our purposes, and that's Ben Reilly. He debuted as such with that name in Spider-Man number 51 in 1994. That's because it's adjectiveless Spider-Man. It's rare for Spider-Man comics to not have an adjective. However, However, the concept of Peter having clones, specifically Ben, had been around since the 70s, but that had been intended to be a one-shot and then it ballooned. This Ben heralds back to smack dab in the middle of the clone saga. A saga that has a lot of history and is now an infamous case of editorial pushing a story to go on too far. Ben Reilly would prove popular, even if the bait and switch initially pulled of him being the real Spider-Man and Peter Parker was not. In fact, after his death, there was fan backlash to bring him back. Ben Reilly is the first successful Peter Parker clone created by Miles Warren, aka the Jackal, and one of the most stable and well, nice. Not homicidal like some of those other clones out there who made this list as well. The name Ben Reilly comes from both Uncle Ben and Aunt May. The Ben from Uncle Ben, and the May from May's maiden name. Fans of Ben admired his attempts to build his own life and fight through the existential crisis that comes with being a clone. Who am I? What's the purpose of my existence? Plus, he had a vest. Never underestimate the appeal of a vest.
Number 6. Venom. This May Parker comes to us from the reality of Earth 9997. That would be the universe of Earth X. She first appeared in 1999's Earth X series in issue number 1. She is also the daughter of Peter Parker and Mary Jane, like so many of these kids. However, her mother died of cancer when she was younger. Her powers manifested when she was just a teen and are similar to her father's. But May also has the powers granted to her by the alien symbiote known as Venom, whom she is bonded to. Initially, the Venom symbiote sought her out after leaving an elderly Eddie Brock, hoping to continue its vengeful pursuits against May's father and turn her against him. May's willpower and spider sense proved too powerful for the symbiote though, and so its plan did not work. Instead, she bent the being to her will and used the symbiote for her own heroic means. But she still goes by the name Venom, which I like. Number 5. Benji Parker. Benji is one of Peter's children with Mary Jane from the reality of Earth 19529. He first appeared in Spider-Man Life Story issue number 3 and was created by Chip Zdarsky and Mark Bagley. In this reality, Mary Jane gave birth to twins and left Peter shortly after they were born, not being able to deal with the fact that Peter led 2 lives, one is Peter Parker and one is the hero Spider-Man. Benji was likely mostly estranged from his father for a good amount of his childhood, as Mary Jane took her children with her when she left Peter and raised them near Portland, Oregon. But Benji would reconnect with his dad when he was 11. Number 4. Claire Parker. Claire is the twin sister to Benji. She also first appeared in Spider-Man Life Story issue number 3. Later on in their lives, her family would be tormented by the villain known as Moreland, who killed their Uncle Ben shortly after Claire had returned home after finishing college. Peter hoped to lure Moreland away from his family by returning to New York, but instead Moreland chose this opportunity to strike on Peter's kids. He attempted to devour Claire's life energy, but she managed to fend him off by attacking him while he fed. Benji came up with a theory that Moreland was actually more vulnerable to being attacked while feeding, and came up with a plan to use himself as bait so that Claire could defeat him. This plan actually worked, but it also left Benji permanently injured, causing him to have to walk with a cane for the rest of his life. Number 3. Spiderling. Anna May Annie Parker is from the Earth of 18119. She made her first appearance in 2015's Amazing Spider-Man Renew Your Vows issue number 1. Her Earth was revealed to be one of the alternates condensed and weirdly preserved in God Emperor Doom's battle world following the incursions. The reality was transformed into the domain known as the Regency. In this alternate reality, Annie was the daughter of Mary Jane and Peter and developed spider-like abilities similar to her father's. Her spider sense also grants her a kind of future vision, and as such is considered more involved and more powerful than Peter's. Number 2. Little Benjamin Benji Parker. This Ben Parker, fondly referred to by his sister as Benji, first appeared in 1998's Spider-Girl in issue 59. You know what that means? He is the little brother of May Mayday Parker. Benji showed signs of powers very early on. He bonded with the Carnage symbiote when he was just a little toddler, and May had to use sonic waves to separate the symbiote from him. Because he was so small, his eardrums actually burst, giving him hearing loss and making him deaf, which May felt awful about and super responsible for. Even without his hearing though, Benji was still a perfectly happy little boy. He would later recover his hearing, but after bonding with the symbiote, it was believed that the experience may have altered Benji's physiology somehow. His powers began to surface shortly afterward, leaving him crawling on ceilings and walls and manifesting and using his own super strong organic webbing. It's believed Benji could even grow up become a more powerful hero than both his sister and his father. Number 1. May Mayday Parker. May Parker, aka Spider-Girl, aka Spider-Woman, is one of the most famous of Spider-Man's kids. kids. She is from the alternate reality of Earth 982 and first appeared in the 1989 What If series in issue 105. The story she was featured in sought to answer the question, what if Mary Jane had never lost the baby and Spider-Man had a Spider-Girl? People loved Mayday so much that she would later get her own series, Spider-Girl, which would have a 100-issue run. Pretty impressive. Like her little brother, she is of course the daughter of Mary Jane and Peter. She shares her father's abilities, but she isn't quite as physically strong as he is. However, she does have enhanced agility and spider sense, which more than makes up for that slight difference in strength.
Kicking off the list at number 10. Ghost Spider. Coming from Earth 11638, aka the perfect world. Okay. This Peter Parker has a much brighter beginning, meaning Uncle Ben never actually passed away and gave the whole great responsibility speech. Instead, he encourages Peter to become a stronger Spider-Man, which sounds good on paper. It sounds like the ideal world. But does he recommend protein shakes and proper exercise and nutrition? No. See, Uncle Ben pushes Peter to abduct Spider-Man from other worlds and then absorb their life force via this portal that Parker Technologies created. So he's a bit of a dick, this Uncle Ben. He's not really the nicest guy. Maybe he's fine, I don't know. This whole system seems a little bit whack. Now eventually Earth 616 Spider-Man shows up. They both hear about each other. It's interesting because Uncle Ben poisons our Peter and then he wakes up confused and they fight it out and our Peter Parker comes out on top, luckily, with the perfect amazing spider getting his soul sucked into that machine. Now the perfect Spider-Man spirit was then trapped in the underworld like hell, and then from here it only gets more strange. Well, rather it gets more Banner. See, Banner was the current Sorcerer Supreme at this time, so he ended up freeing Peter in his astral form, but then Peter absorbed all those spirits of the damned while he was down there, so when he came back up, this perfect spider was now Ghost Spider. Number 9. Old Man Spider. Ezekiel Sims from Earth 4, aka Old Man Spider, took over the web-slinging spot after Peter Parker lost his life to Morlun. Now, Ezekiel first appeared in Edge of Spider-Verse issue 5. He was actually recruited by Spider UK, who I'll talk about a little bit later, to go against Morlun and the Inheritors. Now, Ezekiel rescued Ben Reilly and Kane from the Inheritors, which is awesome, and then a bunch of other spider beings were then recruited, but Deimos tracked them down and snapped this Spider-Man's neck. He caught him off guard. Brutal. And in his last words, he revealed his true self and told Peter to protect Silk, aka the bride. All that matters. What a beautiful last sentence. We love impactful last words here at Top 10 Nerd. It's the best. And you know what else we like? We like when you like our videos. Literally, go and give this video a thumbs up and it will do wonders for our channel. We're trying our best, so you know, all we ask is for a little click. Maybe subscribe, maybe like, maybe notifications if you're feeling good. I don't know. Let's get back to the list. Number 8. Spider UK. Here he is, Billy Braddock himself. I told you I'd talk about him. He began his life as Captain Britain actually before he was webbing people up. So he's actually rocking both teams. He's a busy guy. He's on the Captain Britain team and then the Spider Army. He made his first appearance in Edge of Spider-Verse issue 2 over on Earth 833. Now, this Spider-Man is one of my favorite versions. His arc is so fun. He can hop between dimensions whenever he chooses, and then after the defeat of the Inheritors, spoilers, he keeps an eye on Earth 3145, and then during the Spider-Geddon storyline, in issue 2, Spider UK dies in an explosion and is buried in England on Earth 803, the home of Lady Spider, who loved the idea of Spider UK being buried in the same cemetery as her parents because she loved him like a brother, of course. Brother zoned even after death. He's down there like, really? Okay. That's a good one. Number 7, Spider-Man. Literally, this gets a little gross. Now imagine if Spider-Man had more spider than man when he was bit. That's what happened to Patton Parnell when he first entered comics in Edge of Spider-Verse issue 4. See, Patton lived a pretty dark life. He lived with an abusive Uncle Ted, he would perform horrible experiments on animals, and he spied on his neighbor Sarah Jane. So it's not a healthy system that he's got going on here in any way, really. One day, Sarah Jane and Patton went to Alcorp Industries in hopes of freeing all these test animals, but that's when Patton saw this red radioactive spider. He was like, I want to touch it. And then he did, got bit, and then got kicked out. Now, overnight, he didn't get jacked. His vision didn't get better. He wasn't webbing up Dr. Peppers and lamps. When he got his abilities, he started eating everything. He ate a mouse, and then he ate a cat, and then when Uncle Ted walked in, he was like, what's up? Now, this version is, of course, extremely powerful, but he's also extremely dark. We love the balance. We love balance.
Number 6, Spider-Side. Believing himself to be the real Peter Parker, this Spidey clone was specifically engineered by the Jackal to kill the real Peter Parker, Ben, Kane, and Mary Jane. As a clone, he possesses many of the same abilities the real Peter has, such as superhuman strength, speed, and wall crawling, and spider senses, but what really sets him apart is his complete control over his molecular structure. With this ability, Spider-Side is able to extend his limbs, shapeshift, control the density of his body, and so much more. He actually uses this to simulate the artificial webbing used by Spider-Man by turning parts of himself into semi-liquid and just flicking it around. Adopting the name Spidercide after the Jackal jokingly said that this Peter would commit mass Spidercide for him, he actually followed through and once released a toxin in the air that killed 2,600 people across the state of Pennsylvania. Later, Skyer removes his clone degeneration factor after he betrays the Jackal, and good thing he does because that kept him alive for a little bit longer until he eventually fell off the roof of the Daily Bugle and was put in a stasis chamber, preventing him from ever being a threat again. First appearing all the way back in 1995 as Spidercide in New Warriors number 61. Check out this clone's short run as part of the Spider family for yourself. Number 5, Peter Parker, Earth 70,237. Many years into the future, we get a glimpse into the life of a retired Spider-Man who now spends his days working in a flower shop. MJ has already passed away due to radioactivity from what I guess I'll refer to as Peter's lovin'. You probably all know what I'm talking about, and there are actually no more heroes or villains around as a new merciless police force known as the Rain control the city. J. Jonah Jameson of all people is actually the one to convince Peter to take up the mantle of Spider-Man once again to free the city from the Rain. However, this has proven to be a very difficult task, as Mayor Waters does whatever he can to stand in his way. Facing off against the elderly Sinister Six, Peter learns to conquer his demons and truly begins his triumphant return as the friendly webhead. As he is a bit older than most Spider-Men, his reflexes are a little bit rusty and he is more vulnerable to attacks despite having his superhuman durability. After an all-out battle with Rain and Venom, who turned out to be Mayor Waters' assistant, Peter comes out victorious and the world goes back to the way it should be, full of heroes and villains. This version of Peter doesn't get to enjoy the return of heroes for long as he is murdered by Deimos, having his head crushed by Mary Jane's tombstone. If you're interested, check out this alternate Spider-Man in 2007's Spider-Man Reign number 1. Number 4, Web Slinger. Originating from Earth, spelled E-U-R-T-H, there was once a young boy who was fascinated by spiders, and as a young man, he dared the journey into the mysterious Web Wood, a place filled with mysterious beings, to meet the mysterious Widow of the Web because he really just wanted to know more about spiders. Impressed by him, she used her magical abilities to give him all the powers of the Spider Kingdom with one condition attached. He could never use the powers for his own interest. Now, these powers weren't really too much to write home about considering spiders don't have too much going on for them. He really just gained extra limbs and web generating abilities. Not long after, his uncle was in trouble and the boy ended up using his powers to save him, which really angered the widow, causing her to curse the boy. From that day forward, he lived out his life as a monstrous looking spider-human hybrid. Deciding to isolate himself from society, the boy took up the name Web Slinger and became the guardian of Webwood. However, despite all the good he does as Web Slinger, he is still seen as no better than the criminals he fights due to his monstrous appearance. Give his story a read for yourself in 2000's Avatar Covenant of the Shield number 2. Number 3, we have Spider-Man Noir. Raised by his Aunt May and Uncle Ben during the Great Depression, this Peter was raised to believe that good could triumph over evil no matter what. Now, gaining his powers after an antique spider statue breaks open and he is bit by a horde of spiders, he awakens the next day with these arachnid-like abilities, such as being able to shoot organic webs from his wrists, spider senses, and of course the signature superhuman abilities of every Spider-Man. Equipped with his signature Spider-Man Noir suit modeled after his uncle's World War I airman uniform, Peter stealthily moves about in the shadows, taking down baddies with his spider powers and revolvers. This Peter is pretty interesting because in the beginning of his career, he seemed to have no problem killing villains, killing the Vulture before he could murder his Aunt May. But later on he seemed to grow conscious and instead relied more on his powers than on his firepower. As a member of the Superior Spider Army, we saw him stationed on Earth 928, and he was a fairly key member of the war until he was very badly injured by Bricks and Bora, and had to kinda sit the rest of it out and do whatever he could from behind the scenes. Outside of that storyline, we have seen him fight the likes of his Earth's Norman Osborn and the Chameleon, and we even got to see him in the animated movie Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, where he was voiced by Nicolas Cage. Now, if you're wondering why I included him on this list today since he doesn't really have a dark attitude to the world, here's why. My reasoning is because he literally grew up during the Great Depression, one of the darkest times in human history, and had to deal with some pretty dark subject matter while fighting the urge to succumb to it. So, I highly recommend you check out Spider-Man Noir for yourself in his first appearance in 2009's Spider-Man Noir number 1. Coming in at number 2, we have Last Stand Spider-Man. Now, this version of Spider-Man is a possible future Peter Parker that we get to see thanks to Madam Web. In this future, Peter kills Kraven the Hunter to avenge the deaths of Kane and Mattie Franklin, and this sort of flips some switch in Peter because from that point on, he was much darker and deadlier. Adopting a new costume and title as an anti-hero, this version of Spider-Man is kicked out of the Avengers for good and winds up hurting his loved ones so badly, leaving him all alone with no one to worry about. All of his quote-unquote heroic deeds do eventually catch the attention of the police, and he goes on the run as a fugitive. Years later, as an old man, Peter visited his Aunt May's grave, aware that his younger self was actually hiding in the shadows watching his every move. Peter was confronted by the NYPD, and though he was given the choice to surrender and admit to his crimes, he refused and fought against them until he was shot down and killed. Now, I know we've talked about darker versions of Peter that are okay with killing and whatnot, but what sets Last Stand apart is that he seems to eventually realize what he was doing was probably not the best, and he felt the only way to atone for his sins was to actually die. Now, I highly recommend you check the story out for yourself because it is a great read, so head on over to 2003's Amazing Spider-Man Volume 2, number 58. And finally, number 1, we have Peter Parker Earth 8351. Known as Assassin Spider-Man, this universe's Peter Parker becomes an assassin working alongside Wolverine, leaving basically all aspects of his old life behind, including his longtime girlfriend Mary Jane. This Spider-Man is the complete inverse of his 616 counterpart. We later find out during the events of Edge of the Spider-Verse that Peter left his old life behind to protect his loved ones, as he states that with great power comes great responsibility and even greater enemies. Shown to be always serious, lacking his signature quips and jokey demeanor in battle, likely because he has no problem coping with the situation like his mainstream counterpart, this Spidey has shown no qualms about killing and does whatever it takes to get the job done. Now, this is likely due to his friendship with Wolverine, having adapted to his personality to better fit their job style. Having received formal training to hone his skills, this Peter possesses highly refined versions of the Spidey powers we all know and love. The most impressive being his spider senses, which is honed so much that he just seems to know things, even to the point that he knows what's going on before his opponent could think about it. So, beating him is nearly impossible to do thanks to this precognition. He's also a master at hand-to-hand combat, able to defeat Black Widow with ease, and a master marksman, able to use any gun he gets his hands on. Added as a member of the Superior Spider-Man's Superior Spider Army, he alongside the other Spider-Men of the multiverse take on Karn. However, he is unfortunately defeated by the likes of Deimos' clone. Appearing for the first time in 2008's What If Spider-Man vs. Wolverine number 1, why not check this cold webhead out for yourself? Number 10, Symbiote Spider-Man. Obviously, we have to start off this list with a classic. Introduced in 1989's What If Volume 2 number 4, we're given a glimpse into the life of Earth 1089's Peter Parker after his suit bonded with the Venom symbiote. In this reality, the symbiote couldn't be removed from Peter Parker, even though the Fantastic Four and other heroes tried using a combination of magic and science. It ended up taking over Peter's mind and body, feeding off his adrenaline, causing him to age at a very rapid rate. Once his body couldn't sustain the symbiote any longer, it used him to possess superheroes like Hulk and even caused the death of a few others. Free from the symbiote's control, it's then revealed that Peter Parker has now aged to 85 with not a whole lot of time left. He was later found dead by Mr. Fantastic, surrounded by research on how to kill the symbiote that he was once bonded to. Although it was out of his control, Symbiote Spider-Man was considered even worse than Venom, one of the most sadistic villains in the Marvel Universe, and unfortunately he never really got that redemption. Number 9, Peter Parker, Earth 9591. Now, we're all familiar with the origin story of Peter Parker. Spider bite leads to powers, leads to the birth of the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. But have you ever wondered what it would look like if things took a bit of a different turn after that spider bite? Well, wonder no longer, because in 1995's Ruin number 2, we're actually introduced to a different Peter Parker who isn't so lucky. After being bitten by the radioactive spider, Peter develops a total of 0 powers and is instead infected with a mutant virus that ultimately leads to his death. This Earth never gets the chance to meet the hero Spider-Man, and instead they're given a rash and scar-covered Peter Parker who was forced to live the remainder of his life in quarantine so he wouldn't infect anyone else. I always wondered what would happen realistically after that spider bite, but man, I really didn't think it would be that dark. Number 8, Ghost Spider. Now, this is one of my favorite costumes in the Spider-Man PS4 game, so I had to add it to the list. On Earth 11,638, Peter's Uncle Ben wasn't ever murdered and actually helped him hone his skills as the Amazing Spider. Despite this, he doesn't always use his abilities and intellect for good, and thanks to the resources from his lab, Parker Technologies, the Amazing Spider found a way to bring over other Spider-Men from different universes and absorb their powers. After bringing Earth 616 Peter Parker into his universe, the Spider is convinced by him that what he's been doing isn't heroic at all. Then, when Ben is about to absorb Earth 616 Peter's powers, we see the Spider stand in the way and instead had his powers absorbed, putting his body into a comatose state and trapping his spirit in hell. Following the Sorcerer Supreme's fight with the Infernal Hulk, we see Peter given a second chance at life after he was infused with the spirits and powers of the Repentant Damned. Now possessing powers similar to Ghost Rider along with his Spidey powers, He awakes from his coma as the Ghost Spider and uses his second chance to correct some of the mistakes he's made already. Check him out in his first appearance in 2011's Amazing Spider-Man Annual number 38. Number 7. Superior Spider-Man. Following an insane life that deserves a read if you're not familiar with it already, Otto Octavius transplanted his mind into the body of Peter Parker, leaving Peter in his body. Still retaining Peter's memories, he was able to trick all of Peter's loved ones into thinking nothing was wrong. Otto believed that he could be a better Spider-Man and, following the death of Peter Parker, took up the role as the Superior Spider-Man, upgrading the spider suit to better fit his needs. Many battles ensued, and then it's revealed along the way that Peter's consciousness still lived on inside his body, and after the Goblin King kidnapped Anna Maria, Otto's love interest while in Peter's body, Otto begins to hesitate to save others as he has a chance to save her and doubts he can save everyone without having time to plan. Peter's consciousness pushes him to save the child who is also in danger at the same time, and Otto realizes that Peter is more deserving of the role of Spider-Man and completely erases his consciousness so that Peter can take control of his body once more and save everyone. He sacrificed himself for the girl he loved and the man he hated for the greater good, and that just goes to show you that even if you start off as a villain, you can change and become a hero. Now there's a lot more to the story that I had to gloss over or skip, so I highly recommend you check out the story for yourself, starting with The Amazing Spider-Man number 697. Number 6. Spider Carnage. Just so you all know, I'm going to be talking about the Spider Carnage that we see in 1998's Spider-Wars arc in the Spider-Man animated series. Ben Reilly, also known as Scarlet Spider, but not to be confused with Kane Parker, was a successfully cloned Spider-Man created by Miles Warren. Hating that there was a double of him out there, Ben bonded with the Carnage symbiote, creating the terrifying and powerful creature known as Spider Carnage. With all the powers and abilities of both Spider-Man and Carnage, Ben devastated New York and intended to wipe out pretty much all of reality, but thankfully he was somewhat stopped by the Spider-Man of different realities. Traveling to another dimension to try and unfold his plan there, he gains the support of that world's Kingpin, but is eventually attacked by one of the various Spider-Men once again. Our friendly Spidey realizes somehow that Ben is not truly evil, he's just confused and hurt since both his Aunt May and Uncle Ben are gone. So he enlists the help of Earth's 31,198's Uncle Ben, who is able to appeal to the Peter within and calm down the beast. This unfortunately was not enough to unbind him from the symbiote though, and Ben Reilly decided to jump into an unbalanced portal, ultimately vaporizing both him and the symbiote. Now even though this is an older storyline from the show, I highly recommend you check it out for yourself because it still holds up, trust me. So check out Season 5, Episode 12 and 13 of Spider-Man the Animated Series. Number 5. Poison. Peter Parker from Earth 70,134 has a similar history to his 616 counterpart up until his second battle with Morlun. And now hanging from a cocoon under the Brooklyn Bridge, he is offered the chance to be reborn by the other. However, he actually rejected the power by ripping off its head and killing it. This was a pretty bad idea because this left his metamorphosis / resurrection incomplete. Lucky for him though, the Venom symbiote sensed this somehow and left Mac Gargan to merge with Peter. Although he fought against the symbiote for months on end, Peter eventually succumbed to it and allowed it to destroy his psyche and completely take over. Believing that his new form was a gift that should be shared, he tried to have it bond with Mary Jane, who obviously refused, and soon after both Wolverine and Luke Cage attempted to take him down, but failed because Poison is way too strong. He literally has all the powers of Peter Parker and Venom. Skip ahead a little bit and we see him try to convince MJ once again to accept his quote-unquote gift, and she says no again for obvious reasons and somehow convinces him to leave. So even though Peter had completely lost himself to the symbiote, he still showed some self-restraint, making him not the worst dark alternate, I guess. Yet another one-off Dark Spidey. Check out this Earth's Peter for yourself in 2007's What If Spider-Man the Other number 1. Number 4. Spiders Man. Yep, you heard me right. Spiders Man. Once a promising young student at Horizon University, Peter of Earth 11,580 gained his powers after he fell into a massive colony of genetically altered spiders. Assumed to be dead because it looked like the spiders completely devoured him, in reality the spiders had actually just absorbed his consciousness and started to act as a single hive mind, dubbing itself Spiders Man. The name kind of makes sense now, right? Yeah. This Peter played a decent role in the Spider-Geddon storyline as both he and Spider-Norman are recruited into the Superior Spider Army and both decide to eventually leave the group. They end up being teleported to the Web of Life and Destiny, and while Spiders-Man is feasting on Carnes' corpse, Norman decides to destroy the web, but not before Spiders-Man sends a bunch of his spiders across the multiverse to spy on all the other Spideys out there. With powers similar to Carl King, aka the Thousand, this creepy crawly alternate Spider-Man is not one that I would want to go toe-to-toe with. Having first appeared in 2019 Spider-Geddon number 3, why not check him out for yourself and let me know what you think of him in the comments below. Number 3, we have Masked Marvel. In 2018's What If the Punisher number 1, we are given a glimpse of what it would be like if Peter Parker was Spider-Man, but also the Punisher. Peter of this Earth, Earth 71,928, has a pretty much identical origin story to his 616 counterpart, until he decided to kill the burglar that killed his Uncle Ben rather than leave his fate in the hands of the police. From that point on, he decided that as Spider-Man, he would do anything necessary when it came to fighting crime, even keeping the gun that killed his Uncle Ben on him at all times as a reminder of what had been taken from him and what he had to do to keep everyone in his life safe. With all the same powers of our familiar 616 webhead, this Spidey fights crime under the name of the Masked Marvel. Although he tried to avoid using the gun at all costs, this Peter had no issue pulling it out and killing someone if it was for the greater good. An excellent example of this is when the Sinister Six kidnapped his Aunt May and Betty Brant, and he had no other choice but to engineer weapons specifically designed to take out each member of the Six. Now eventually Peter meets Gwen Stacy and falls in love, and she ends up getting kidnapped by the Green Goblin, which once again forces him to create a weapon specifically designed to kill the villain. After this though, he actually retires his suit, reveals his identity to Gwen, and they get married and live a very peaceful life together. Kind of a nice way to end, don't you think? Why not give his story a read for yourself and let me know what you think. Number 2, Brian Cornfield. Born and raised in New York City of Earth 616, Brian Cornfield was a huge Spider-Man fan and wanted nothing more than to get in contact with him. However, after his mother was mugged and killed, his motives changed and he wanted revenge on not only the killer, but Spider-Man for not saving her. After coming in contact with Dwarf, he was granted powers similar to Spider-Man and became Spider-X. What sets him apart from our regular old Spider-Man is that Brian is not very easy on the eyes, as he possesses 4 extra spider-like limbs coming out of his waist and upper back. And he also has razor-sharp fangs capable of tearing someone to shreds. After hunting down and killing his mother's killer, he began taking out as many criminals as possible because he truly believed he was created to bring justice to the world. Fast forward a little bit and we see Spider-X fighting his last battle against the mutant Paralyzer, who was trying to recreate Zax, and he ended up succeeding. In the fight against Zax, all the heroes present came together and defeated the giant electrical being, but the explosion actually killed both Paralyzer and Spider-X, and unfortunately, we haven't seen either of them again since. Check out Brian Cornfield for yourself in his first and last appearance as Spider-X in 1993's Midnight Suns Unlimited number 3. And number 1, Arachnite. In the Warp World storyline that follows the life of Peter Parker, who lives in a pocket dimension where history was rewritten, we see Peter's Aunt May and Uncle Ben get murdered by the Goblin by night on their way back from the American Museum of Natural History. Critically injured, Peter gets bitten by a mystical spider and is linked to the totem energy of ancient spiders, granting him his signature Spidey powers and saving his life. However, there was a drawback. This connection shattered his mind into 4 separate personalities, and although he fought against them for most of his early life, he eventually learned to listen to them and allow them to come through whenever they were needed. These personalities are known as the Arachnid, who is the dominant aspect of Arachnite and is the most athletic persona, the Knight, who serves as Peter's aggressive side and is what keeps his crime-fighting side motivated, CEO Peter, who serves as the confident CEO of Parker Industries, and Science Peter, who is a working scientist with a strong passion for technology. Fighting crime as a member of the Defenders alongside Soldier Supreme, Iron Hammer, and Weapon Hex, Arachnite is a true hero through and through despite going through a decent amount of hardships. Give this story a read for yourself and check out Arachnite's first appearance in 2018's Infinity Wars number 3. Number 10, Spider-Man Earth 10,011. Starting off with a pretty dark one hailing from the Cancerverse. Now, what is the Cancerverse, you ask? Well, on Earth 10,011, life finally defeated death, and for some reason, with such a surplus of life being fueled by the many angled ones, this caused every living thing on Earth to be corrupted and basically turned into living corpses that will do their bidding. Now, it's a really interesting story, so check it out for yourself in 2010's Realm of Kings number 1, but anyways, let's get back to the Spider-Man. She is one of the grotesque creatures we see go head to head with the Cosmic Avengers, while when they attack Sanctuary 2. Now, we don't get to know her for very long since she is beaten to death by Ronan the Accuser shortly after her introduction, but from what we can see, I can understand why you wouldn't want her around for too long. Possessing all of the proportionate powers of a spider, such as enhanced strength, speed, stamina, and reflexes, this Spider-Man also possesses spider-like fangs, arms, and a lower half, which they bring to the table, basically making them the spider equivalent of a centaur. So yeah, I really wouldn't want that charging at me at full speed. Check her out for yourself in her first and last appearance in 2010's Thanos Imperative number 4. Number 9, Webman. Now another one-off Spidey variant with not the most clever name in my opinion, but hey, who am I to judge? Webman is basically Spider-Man's evil mirror twin introduced to us when Spider-Man entered a room through a window and started looking at his reflection in a mirror. Now what he didn't realize is that it was actually a one-way mirror, and on the other side was Dr. Doom, who jumped at the chance to use his twin machine to create a copy of Spider-Man. With all the powers of our friendly neighborhood hero, you would assume that this evil clone would be a formidable foe. However, he was created with the opposite traits of Peter, meaning he was actually quite stupid and was not able to complete the task given to him by Dr. Doom. Realizing this, Doom attempts to create another clone of Peter, but his twin machine is destroyed before he could complete the task, and this led to his arrest. Now it's actually unknown where Webman ended up. He could actually still be out there somewhere, probably trying to find his way out of a wet paper bag or something, I don't know. Either way, why not check out Webman for yourself in his first and supposedly last appearance in 1977's Spidey Super Stories number 25. Number 8, Blood Spider. Alongside Joe Emberlin, aka Jagged Bow, and Timothy Carlskin, aka Death Shield, Michael Bingham was taken under Taskmaster's wing and trained to mimic Spider-Man in order to one day kill him. Although Michael possesses somewhat primitive tech compared to Peter, such as his web shooters that are attached to a backpack-like fluid holder, he is still not someone you want to mess with. Since he was handpicked by the Taskmaster to be Spider-Man's match, he was trained in the fighting style of Spider-Man, and it can be assumed that his powers were a close match to those of Spider-Man himself before he was even picked. Now, not a whole lot is known about how he obtained his powers, but Blood Spider has demonstrated superhuman reflexes and strength in many fights over the years. He's able to smash his fist into a wall without flinching, dodge bullets, and he has the ability to cling to walls like our wise-cracking webhead, but it's not known if that is through artificial or natural means. Created by Jerry Bingham and also named after him, take a look at his character for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 1992's Amazing Spider-Man number 367. Number 7, Scarlet Spider. The Jackal's first attempt at cloning Peter Parker, Kane Parker was initially thought to be a success, but later degenerated and became mentally unstable. Discarded by the Jackal but allowed to live, Kane left and soon realized that his degeneration had actually amplified his powers and made him stronger than Peter. Able to lift up to approximately 60 tons, Kane also outclasses Peter with his super speed, stamina, and Mark of Kane, which is an ability he has that allows him to severely burn someone through skin-to-skin contact. Kane's major introduction into the Spidey world was during the Clone Saga, where he was tricked into believing the real Peter Parker was actually the clone, and he was determined to eliminate Ben Reilly, the actual clone, so his quote-unquote clone could live the life he wasn't able to have thanks to the degeneration of his body and mind. Now that's all I'm going to say about the storyline, because he does have to do some pretty twisted things, and I genuinely think you guys should all read it for yourselves. Since then, Kane has toned down his evil intentions and has used his powers for good, going as far as dying during the fight with Deimos as a member of the Spider Army, but that didn't last for too long because he does eventually come back to life. Now obviously there is so much more I could talk about when it comes to this character. He is such a great one and there are so many layers to him. It was so difficult to condense it all down. So if you want to know more, let me know in the comments below and maybe we'll dedicate an entire video to Kane Parker. But for now though, check him out in his first appearance in 1994's Web of Spider-Man number 119. Number 6, Doppelganger. The evil, pretty much mindless duplicate of Spider-Man from Earth 616, this version of Spider-Man was created by Magis during the Infinity War. Although he was killed during the Infinity War, this 6-armed Spidey clone was later revived by the Demogoblin, becoming its pet for a while. Doppelganger appears a few more times after the aftermath of the Infinity War, teaming up with Carnage, Shriek, Carrion, and the Demogoblin during the infamous Maximum Carnage killing spree, and then is later seen as part of the Spider Army to help defeat Morlun and the other Inheritors. Unfortunately for him, after many adventures, the Doppelganger was eventually captured and imprisoned in the rebuilt Ravencroft. Possessing many of the same powers as the original Spider-Man, what really sets Doppelganger apart is his raw strength. Being able to lift up to 25 tons as opposed to the normal 10 that most other Spider heroes can lift. Why not check him out for yourself in Infinity War number 1. Number 5, Pestilence. In 2005's Cable and Deadpool number 15, we see Deadpool dropped in Earth 5701, while on a search for Cable where the supervillain Apocalypse has conquered New York and then changed 4 superheroes into his horsemen, one being the Spider-Man of this world. Alongside Famine, who's the Blob, Death, who is Archangel, and an alternate Cable known as War, they all serve under Apocalypse and aim to protect him at all costs. Now known as Pestilence, this 4-armed and 4-legged version of Spider-Man is not one you want to get close to, especially when you learn about his poisonous fangs and his hunger for human bones. Check him out for yourself and let me know what you think in the comments below. Number 4, The Other. In the 2005-2006 storyline of the same title, we see Spider-Man begin a transformation to his wild side. Peter began having these strange symptoms and dreams of Uncle Ben and spiders. Thinking he might be dying, Peter threw himself more and more into his crime fighting, especially against the scientific vampire known as Morlun, as Moreland wreaked havoc by beating Spider-Man so badly that he ended up in the hospital, and also by smacking Mary Jane around. Peter got to the point where he just couldn't take it anymore and reached his limits. In 2006 Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man number 3, we see Spider-Man pin Moreland down and kill him with a bite to the head. After what we all assume was Peter's death, we see Peter erupt from a cocoon with new powers and a newfound dedication to embracing his spider side that he refers to as the Other. Even though he embraced his dark side for a while, he does eventually come back to his senses and becomes the Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man once more. Number 3. Patton Parnell. Definitely one of the scariest looking Spider-Men, Patton Parnell has been described as a sociopathic version of Spider-Man who made the exact opposite decisions that Peter had. Growing up with an abusive uncle, Uncle Ted, Parnell was always a bit of a weird one as he found joy in experimenting on animals and perversely spying on his next door neighbor Sarah Jane. Like other Spider-Men, Patton was bit by a spider, however, his body's reaction to it was a little bit different. Instead of turning into a superhero, he actually gained the ability to turn into a spider-like monster and started to seek revenge on those who had treated him poorly, starting with his uncle. He eventually leads Sarah Jane to his house and reveals his new form to her, and needless to say, she was terrified and not at all impressed. And then after a bite to the neck, the next morning we see hundreds of baby spiders coming out of Sarah Jane's neck. Thankfully, Parnell doesn't stick around for too long, as just after 3 days of having his power, he is drained of all his life force by Moreland. Check out this twisted story in 2014's Edge of Spider-Verse number 4. Number 2. The Spider. Showcased in the Exiles series, we're introduced to one of the darkest Spider-Men to date. On Earth 15, Peter Parker was a sociopathic mass murderer who was sentenced to 67 consecutive life sentences and merged with the Carnage symbiote before being recruited by the Timebreakers into the Weapon X team. Using none of his powers for good, the Spider joined the other members of the team to try to conquer the Earth instead of actually helping them, finding nothing but joy in killing and torturing. It took a blast from Firestar to end his reign of terror alongside the other rebels. What makes this version of Spider-Man so terrifying is that he's one of the few Spideys who actually keeps the symbiote his entire career. With the symbiote's powers combined with Peter's evil rage, this puts the Spider at the same power level as Carnage at his strongest point, making him a truly frightening foe. Why not check him out for yourself in 2002's Exiles number 12 so you can see just how truly merciless this killer is. Number 1. Zombie Spider-Man. Now, not a whole lot is known about Earth 2149 Peter Parker's life before the zombie apocalypse, but it's presumed that it was similar to his 616 counterpart. On his search for the Necronomicon, the presumed source of the zombie infection, Peter ends up getting bit by Colonel America, who is a zombie at the time, and becomes infected. With his mind still relatively human, he hurries home to try and get his Aunt May and Mary Jane to safety. However, with the virus spreading quickly through his body, he winds up killing and eating them both. Alongside the other superpowered zombies, they ate almost all life on Earth until they ate Galactus, which granted them all the powers of the Power Cosmic, which they used to travel the universe, eating other worlds in their endless search for more food. After 40 years of eating worlds, they finally returned to Earth, still hungry to find Reed Richards' dimensional portal so they could finally continue their quest. However, Spidey noticed that his hunger was completely gone. Regaining his sense of justice, Spidey alongside some other good zombies found themselves locked in a battle with the other zombie heroes, trying their very hardest to convince them that their hunger was also gone and they could become heroes once again.